Hey everyone, this is a screencast for using Cobalt. This screencast we're going to talk about writing your own controls. Controls in Cobalt are actually just Cobalt elements that have properties and methods on them that let you define what they're supposed to do. The big difference between a Cobalt control and a user control is that you can make any change that you want to with a Cobalt control because all the selectors still work on them. So you can get in there and make changes to individual parts of a control that someone else wrote, but still use a lot of the functionality that they built in. A Cobalt control and even elements are able to be rendered onto the page outside of the ready events that you queue up on the page. This means that you can use a Cobalt control without actually using the rest of the framework to make changes. The big difference is that you are kind of limited on what you can select at that point because some of those things haven't been generated yet. You kind of think of it as with a jQuery you have the ready event, so you have full access to everything, whereas with JavaScript, as you're writing down the page, you only have access to what's already been created. But here it's more the context of the control that you're running in. When you play around with it, you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. Cobalt controls can and elements are able to generate from just arbitrary pieces of HTML that you pass into them, or you can also load from templates that are outside of the page that you're working on. So to start, let's just do a quick example where we're going to take some HTML and we're going to make a few changes to it. We're going to select the header, we're going to get in there and make a quick change, but then we're going to kick right back out to this control. So if you ever see what that is, that's just so you can stay within the context of the original element. So anyways, we've created this control and now we're going to attach it to the page. So now when we run our page, got nothing out there, we run it, you can see we've got our hello world. Now like I was mentioning before, this is all within this ready event, but if we wanted to, we can move this outside, create it here. Well, we can't append it anywhere because the rest of the page hasn't been created yet, but what we can do is display it onto the page. And what this will do is it's kind of like doing a render partial, except we're using a Cobalt element to do the exact same thing. So we'll go ahead and make a couple changes. And refresh it. You can see our changes show up. Able to use our controls directly inside the page. So if you don't need all this right here and the document selectors and all that stuff, well, you can just render it directly in there. Now, I was mentioning a minute ago about using templates. What we'll do here is go ahead and load an external template, and we will add this to the page. And you can see that we're going to access this HTML file, some ugly HTML with some tables, and yeah, it's a big mess. But for this example, we're going to go over and look at our page, and you can see that we've got some markup here, but there's nothing relevant in there. Well, this has been loaded on the fly, so what we can do is go in there and do a few selectors and put the information in there that we want. So got a couple of selectors, making a few changes. We'll refresh the page and take a look, and you can see that now we've got some text, everything's been loaded. And now what we can do is append it to the correct part on the page and use it that way. Now this right here is HTML file, so it's just loading the text in, but if you wanted to, you can always use ASCX files or user controls. So right here we're going to load up the sample control. Okay, there's nothing really special here, but it is worth pointing out that we are using the URL helper to actually map to a resource. If we look over here, we're going to go ahead and attach this out to the window. When we run this page, we're going to see that we have our URL. It's been mapped to our resource like we needed it to, but it was all done within this right here. So now we have it selected in a Cobalt element. We can move it around the page or do whatever we need to with it. Now so far everything's been loading in controls and doing whatever, or content and doing whatever we want to with it. But let's just say we wanted to create a real user control that had properties and methods on it. Well, I hacked together a little date picker here. This is just a simple example of what it's supposed to do. Again, some ugly markup, but what you can see is we're able to define some properties, and these all change what this markup looks like without me actually having to do any selectors here. Now the selectors are inside the control, which is where we want them to be, because now we have properties that we can use to define the same reusable logic. So what we can do is append this to the page, and we'll run it, and you can see that we got ourselves some buttons and stuff like that. It looks okay. Now what I was saying a little while ago about, because this is just a Cobalt element, because we can still do selectors and stuff on it and make changes to it, we can change things about this. So for example, you can see the large gaps in here. Whichever developer did this forgot to do the cell spacing and padding on the table. So what we can do is actually do our own selector, get in there and make changes to it. So we looked at the source code, we know there's a table in there we need to fix. So now when we run this page, you can see that now it got rid of all that extra spacing, and we were able to affect our control. Even though we didn't write it from the beginning, we can get in there and make changes to it. Before you'd seen me include a style sheet as part of this. What we'll do is we'll go ahead and throw in a style sheet here at the end of the page and refresh our page and look at it. And you can see we got our style on there. It looks okay. Now because we are able to do this functionality, this does reach out and grab other parts of the page in order to do its work. If we wanted to, let's just say that this control is part of our project and we always have the same expected behavior on it, and we always need the same style sheet. We can come in here and as part of our rendering process, go ahead and include our style sheet. So when we rebuild the page, and we shouldn't really see a change, but when we refresh this page, we're going to see that our style sheet stays intact because it's now part of that control. So you may or may not want to do something like that, but it is available to you because you're able to reach out and affect other parts of the page from within the individual controls that you have. This is just a small example of some of the things I'm working on. I'm going to be writing some more controls. I'm going to upload this stuff up to GitHub tonight so you can download it and start messing around with it. If you have any questions or suggestions or feedback, feel free to let me know, and thank you for watching.